Welcome to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Dziezgowski from Borough of Jefferson Hills PD in Pennsylvania. He has over 33 years experience in law enforcement. He is third generation police officer. He has a master's degree in legal studies and a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Welcome to the show, Chief Dziezgowski. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored.
Thank you. No, I'm looking forward to it. I was going through your bio and there was a couple things that stuck out, but the first thing I mentioned in your intro, you're third generation. So give us a little bit of background. What made you choose to follow in the footsteps of your family?
Well, I think, again, in my opinion, with the way my family, I have a sister, and it was just me, my dad, my mom, and my sister. We were a tight-knit family, but I just saw my dad was bigger than life, and I saw the respect that he had and he gave to other people. And that meant so much to the people that he dealt with, our friends, family, people that I grew up with that knew him. Even today, he's passed since, but people remember him and they'll come up and they'll just say, "Hey, your dad was really an icon in law enforcement." And again, it all comes down. I know it sounds kind of corny sometimes, but you just have it in your heart to help people and for service. And I saw what he did and what he accomplished in his career. Times were a lot different. I mean, the most he ever made in law enforcement was $31,000, but he raised a family and we never needed for anything. And it's not about the money. It's about just providing for your family, showing love and being respected and respectful to the people that you encounter, and you are able to network that way. You build relationships that way, rapport with people, no matter if you're doing your job or just being friends with someone. So I found that very interesting growing up. However, my recollection of how he was a police officer and my uncle was a police officer is completely different than how we police today.
Mm.
So I learned a lot through his eyes and what he did, but it's completely different policing nowadays. Just with all the guidelines that we have to follow, the rules in there's more rules in place. It's more structured than it was back then. And in fact, he was a police officer, one of those police officers that you just gave a badge and a gun to and said, "Here's a map, go police." Where now there's formal training that you have to accomplish before you can become a police officer and to be certified. So big steps in law enforcement from his era to my era.
Yeah. Do you know what I find to be really interesting is whenever I hear people talking about great leaders, people that they looked up to, admired, that they modeled themselves after, all of these people were operating in that way and showcasing those qualities because that's who they genuinely were. It wasn't who they were trying to be,
Right.
and I think that it's a really important reminder to have that authenticity and to have those values and to carry yourself in a way that people are going to look up to, not because you want people to look up to you, but because that's who you genuinely are. And that's how you want to operate within your community and, within your profession. And I heard that as you were talking of like, that's just who he was, at his core, he was
Mhm.
all of these really great things. And I'm sure he wasn't doing it because he wanted you to think he was bigger than life. He just was that.
Right, exactly. And again, one thing I always have taken to heart is my name's unique. Everyone's name's unique. Your name's unique, and you never want to put a stain on that name. You truly just want to be better, because again, everyone before you has tried to build that name up, and you just don't want to destroy that. And that's the way I kind of live my life. To be honest and truthful, and never put a stain to my last name.
Yeah, I love that. How do you, I know you said that, being respected and being respectful are two of those qualities that really stood out to you.
Mhm.
How necessary do you think that that is, especially in today's world? And how do you teach that to the younger generation to operate in that way? What does that look like?
Well, yeah, again, I think it's a challenge for the new generation. It truly is. We are a society now of usually two working parents in the household, and parents are more and more often having to put their kids in childcare and daycare, and the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s where you still had at least one parent home. That's kind of being missed right now, and so kids are seeing other guardians more so, training them more so than their parents. So some of what I've learned, if that happened to my kids, would be kind of lost in translation on what is expected. So I just always say, look people in the eyes, shake their hands, listen to what they're saying and talking. Don't be distracted by your phone, by other things going on, because when somebody's talking to you, they're giving you respect by communicating. You should give them that same respect back and look them in the eyes and give them that time that they're owed when you're talking to them. So you have their full attention and they have your full attention.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just mutual respect.
Yeah. And I think that for me, time is the most valuable asset that anybody has. And so if you're willing to give someone your time and you're genuinely willing to be present with them, to listen to them, to speak to them, that is a huge deal. And I think we forget that, and I think it's a really important reminder to anyone who's listening, if someone is choosing to spend their time to mentor you, to have a phone call with you, what a gift, because our time is so limited and it's literally our most valuable asset and resource that we have, in our lives. And so if someone's willing to give that to you, it speaks volumes. And I also think for me, I've also really tried to live in a way where I understand that I'm not better than anybody else.
Mhm.
We might all have different titles or roles or degrees or, levels of experience, but when we can show up for someone as an equal, I think that that is also really important.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, when I became chief, um, throughout my career, I've had many chiefs that I've had to work under. And one thing, in my opinion, that I've always tried to aspire to or miss was that family atmosphere,
Hmm.
um, which I think is important these days, even in the realm of a police department. How do you get people to come to work? Well, if they don't enjoy work, do you really want to come to work? No, they don't. So I've tried, and it's always, an uphill battle because not everybody is on the same page. But I tried when I came to Jefferson Hills to build a family atmosphere here that if one thing's important, that we can all depend on each other. We may not eat dinner with each other every night. We're not hanging out with each other, but when people are in need or they need something, they can count on their coworkers for these things for that bond there, that family bond that we're here for each other.
Yeah. I was recommended a book by another chief, and it was a leadership book, and I just started listening to it. So I've only gotten like a little bit in on my audiobook, but it's called The Twin Thieves, and it's really sports oriented. And they were talking about culture, and they went around this, sports team, and they were asking everyone, well, who's responsible for culture, and they were trying to get the opinions of everybody else, and everyone was like, well, coach is responsible for culture. And the guy who is this expert in the space, he goes, no, he's like, maybe coach sets the culture sets the tone, but culture is driven by you guys,
Correct.
and you have to, take accountability rather than external blame, and the culture within the organization is the responsibility of the people within the organization, right? And it was this
Sure.
really interesting way that he said this, because I think that we all look at that, we're like, well, that guy, he's the one, when it's like, well, actually, everyone plays a role in how you can create that culture and that family environment. And, are you doing your part to make it an environment where people want to show up? Are you being kind? Are you, putting an effort with your peers? What does that look like? And I
Right.
think the more we can all understand our role within, whatever situation that we're in, that can help to create more of that positive environment that people want to show up for.
Yeah, you don't want to order somebody to be a fan, think of a family atmosphere. You want them to understand it and buy in. And
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing, buy in. And it takes time because, you know, everybody has their own family issues, work issues and stuff like that. We're never going to solve everyone's problems. But we're here for a common goal. And we spend more time sometimes with our coworkers than we do with our family at home. So we have to make that atmosphere welcoming, so people want to come to work. That's one way. We talked about this earlier about one of the big challenges in law enforcement is hiring and retention. There's a lot of issues right now, social issues going on where it's hard to find quality candidates for positions here. In fact, the way Allegheny County is set up, there's 120 municipalities in a small area,
Mm.
and everybody is basically fighting for the same person. Hard to believe. When I started, I was fighting for one position with 400 people.
Yeah.
And now I can barely get four people to come and apply for my test. And that's synonymous across Allegheny County. It's just, it's hard times. Um, a lot of things have happened in the last 5, 6 years across the country that have kind of hurt law enforcement, and it's a vicious cycle. I mean, there's always positives and negatives that happen in those cycles, and us as leaders have to work those challenges and try to do the best we can with the environment that we're in. Um, you know, we all get paid pretty well doing this job. However, for a split second decision, you could lose everything.
Mm.
And that is weighing on a lot of people. Should I be an accountant where I don't have to worry about, split second decisions and be safe? Or do I take this position that I might pay a little bit more, but I could make one decision that somebody thinks is wrong, and now I've lost everything for not only myself but my family. It's a tough decision. It truly is.
Yeah, I think that I mean, in life, we're always going to have, hard decisions to make. But one of the conversations I've had recently with a lot of people when they're considering, where they want to go, it's this idea of satisfaction and purpose, and I think that your profession, while there's no one that's going to disagree with me that it's one of the hardest, if not the hardest profession in the world, it has so much mission and purpose behind what you
Service.
guys do
Exactly.
that
Service.
you can't replicate as an accountant, and so I think that people are divided between that, and there's no knock on accounting. Some people really like it and,
Yes.
crunching numbers and all the things, but I think that if you are the type of person who wants to help people and you want to feel like you're having a positive impact and you have that, deep intrinsic motivator to
Mhm.
be of service. I think it's hard to replicate that at
Without a doubt.
a lot of other
Yeah.
professions. I know that a lot of agencies, you're spot on, and every agency I talk to, it's the same. They're all fighting each other. There was one state that I worked with that there was another neighboring agency that parked their recruitment truck like in their city.
I
Or
know.
like billboards of like their department, like on the border of their city. And so a lot of people are asking that question of, what do we do? How do we get more people? And what do you think is the solve? How do we get more people to want to enter into your profession?
We've tried a lot of things, and it varies. Like a lot of departments are raising their old facility and building brand new luxury facilities, purposeful luxury facilities. But one, it calls to the residents, and two, it calls to the employees that are working there that they got a brand new, spotless building. Um, Pay, of course, is always going to be a forefront, and benefits and stability. I mean, one thing about law enforcement, especially in Pennsylvania, where you have civil service protection, you have great benefits, you have good, stable work environment, um, and for the most part, a lot of the boroughs are good suburban areas where they are putting money into their buildings and updating stuff. So, the technology is there. It's just there are so many other factors that pe potential candidates are thinking about because it's the long hours, the shift work, the sometimes the training that goes involved. That's why I'm not saying that women can't compete, but women seem to worry about the physical fitness of testing that we have to do, and they don't apply. They won't apply for fear of failure. I welcome that. I want them to, because we need a good mix of male, female. It's a male dominated profession and it shouldn't be in this day and age. But I do see some hesitation from females trying out because it's always, no matter you're male or female, you don't want to fail on what you're trying to accomplish.
Sure.
So we need to bring more females into this profession. Um, so a lot of those things are just maybe meeting, like we try to do seminars in the local high schools, trying to gain interest there. We try to do when they have these employment forums, we try to have a stage there locally for our department. And then we have tours in our building. I know a lot of departments will have some possible grant funding for civilian police academies to kind of get people engaged on what police do, um, kind of build the interest. They'll have a junior police academy for high school students that are thinking about becoming police, so they have a good understanding before they invest in going to the police academy.
There's a few things that I want to kind of circle back to on what you said. But one of the things I think that maybe a lot of people don't think about, and it just popped in my head while you said it, is that you also have the opportunity on a day-to-day basis to positively impact people's lives and experiences to where they might want to be like you. And so I think that that's so powerful, when you think about like, hey, every call for service, or even in between the calls for service, maybe I go to the park, or go shoot some hoops with some of the local kids, or
Right.
whatever that looks like, and just be a cool human being to these people, and for them to look up at you and have that same experience you had with your dad of being like, wow, I want to be like that guy, and it's those little things that you can do on a day-to-day basis that I think also make a huge impact. I I worked for an agency, and they did like a discovery program with the high schoolers, and they were all girls. So they brought in a whole group of girls. I will tell you right now, I have never felt so old in my entire life. When they brought in a bunch of like high school girls, I was like, I am so far removed. I was like, how do I speak their language? Like, what do I
Yes.
do? And we taught a class, and they were like so silly, and they were so, excited. And it was really, really cool. And then I was having some conversations with a few different female leaders, and they said that what they're trying to do is do more like female mentoring to try to help those recruits or those, people who are interested, but maybe, afraid that they're going to fail on the physical fitness portion of it, to help bring them up and have some like mentor opportunities. So maybe that's another thing. If you do have, women officers that are passionate about the career, that maybe they're willing to, put in some time to do some sort of mentorship program.
And it's funny you say that. In my prior department, we when you have a smaller department like I do, it's kind of difficult. Now I have a younger department, and they do get out and meet the public and interact with the kids and everything. So we have a lot of parks and stuff like that. So we're already doing that. But in my prior department, we had the ability. We our female officers would actually have self-defense classes,
Mm-hmm.
and they would help out. It would be women only, and that was a way to kind of start the interaction
Yep.
with the females, saying, hey, self-defense, start with this, and we had a lot of interest for females entering law enforcement just through those classes. So I agree. You open up the doors on a different subject, and it kind of opens their eyes to what law enforcement can be and what they might be able to do if they're interested in the profession.
Yeah, I love it. How do you think that wellness and having different wellness resources within an organization helps with recruitment and retention? Have you seen any positive results based on the things that you guys have implemented?
So I think it helps more so right now with retention, and the reason why I say retention is it you know again, remember, I witnessed my dad and my uncle in a whole different generation,
Hmm.
and they worked themselves silly, because whatever overtime they could grab, they would grab to support their family, because the pay, everything's, consistent with the area you live in, but the pay wasn't that good back then. And so they would, anytime overtime would come up, they would grab it. Now that is less sleep. They're burning candles at both ends. Burnout happens. And you kind of see that when you're dealing with that person now, because how do you feel when you don't get sleep? You're grumpy, maybe a little on edge when you're talking to some people. So and that just continues because life catches up to you. You've got stuff going on at home. Now you're dealing with people and frustrated people when you're working. So that all leads to burnout. And in this era, you're seeing a lot of people who become burned out, who are burning candles at both ends. They're just like, I can't take it anymore. I got to leave.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, I think mental health and well-being right now has helped people to avoid that burnout, and is helping us retain those officers that we probably a couple generations ago might have lost,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that wellness is a component of retention, and most agencies that I talk to and that I work with feel the same way. How can we keep the people who are there, and how can we keep them as healthy and as happy as you possibly can, so that there's longevity? And I think there's always going to be burnout. I think that
Oh,
we're
without a doubt.
all going to go through
Right.
phases. Even if we're doing our best to, not work overtime and, to get the best sleep. I think there's always going to be moments throughout your career where you're like, woof, like I need a break,
Well,
but how do you keep,
we all start out early in our career, full of muster. We want to, hit the world, and nothing can affect us. We'll go through a brick wall,
yeah,
and then we start handling so much call volume, starts wearing on us. Now we're looking forward to the weekends for vacation to get away, and then we have a family, and we have kids, and we have more responsibility. And the more responsibility, you're taking more on, more on, more on. And like you said, we're burning candles at both ends, and now it kind of comes over into our work, where our work isn't as professional as it once was, and we're missing things. We're being short with people. Remember, we talked earlier about giving people our time and attention. Now we're still professional, but we're not giving the people the respect and time that they're owed.
Yeah.
So I think this is wellness and prioritizing the well-being of individuals is key because at least we're opening the lines of communication. We're trying to show them to recognize when they're taking on a little too much responsibility and when they got to take a step back and take a deep breath. That's why we have, sick days. That's why we have vacation time. That's why we have personal time. And, people sometimes don't want to see that they need to take it sometimes. They need to take a sick day, mental health day, to just get their head right and get some sleep.
Yeah.
Because, we talked about like our department right now, my department right now, we work a 12-hour schedule. All right. And for the most part, most of the departments in my area are doing that because it gives them more time off. It gives them at least one weekend off a month or every other week off. But take into consideration now, they've got to go to court where they get held over on a call.
Hmm.
You know, that 14 hours, that 16 hours now becomes a very long day
Yeah.
with little sleep. And now they got to work again 12 hours tonight, you know? So mental health, well-being is critical for the officers here. And even when we're looking to hire candidates, we have a gym at our facility. All right. I think that is a motivator for people coming here. Like they have a chance they don't have to spend money for a gym if they don't want to. Granted, we don't have every piece of equipment out there, but we have enough that they can, solidly work on whatever they need to work on and work on that mental health, work on their physical health and well-being here. So they don't have to spend the extra money. And, it's close to where they live.
Yeah. I've done a really deep dive on professional athletes and how they train because I
Mhm.
do think that you guys in law enforcement are tactical professional athletes and your
Mhm.
career requires that you operate at a high physical and mental level. And when you talk about sleep and rest and recovery and performance, there was a stat that I came across that said if you are awake for 16 plus hours, it's as if you are operating with a zero point zero 0.05 BAC. And,
Yes. Like,
obviously you're not actually impaired, but this has to do with your decision making and your reaction time. And so, to
sure.
your point, if someone is on a 12 and now it's a 15 or it's a 16, and you know that they were probably awake for a few hours before that doing, whatever they needed to do at home or with their family, now we're crossing over that threshold. And so that the way that they're going to operate and make decisions is going to be as if they're slightly impaired. When we take a look at professional athletes and you take a look at some of the greatest of all time, right? You don't want to, I mean, they're all great, but like, let's take a look at the GOATs, like, how do they train? And a lot of their training is focused around sleep, rest, and recovery. And that's
Sure.
not to say that they're not also working hard. So I think that we also need to have a caveat to that because they're also training other things and they're, working really hard, but there's an emphasis on sleep, rest, and recovery. And so I think that we have to be able to apply some of those same concepts to you guys. If we can all agree that you are also, tactical professional athletes, how can we apply some of those same training methods so that you guys are successful? And
Great points. Great points.
yeah, and I think that when we can have that conversation, because we hear all the time like stigma and buy-in and all this stuff, but I think if we can present it in that way of like, hey, like we're training you just like Tom Brady trains, we're
Mhm.
training you just like LeBron trains, we're taking these concepts and we're making it, accessible and realistic for the law enforcement profession. And then how can we, train in a way that's effective so that you are successful? I think that people will start to get more on board with those types of conversations.
Sure. Sure.
I know that you guys are doing quite a bit in wellness, but there were two things that popped out that I want to kind of highlight here. One, you said that you have a chill program. I want to know what that is. And then you have a therapy dog too, our little doggy. So can you talk a little bit about those two things?
I can. Okay. So, in the schools is a chill project. That's where it originated. and in the high schools and middle school. And what it is they have a social worker there and a quiet space for individuals that are just they're on overload and they need a mental health break. So rather than send them home, if they need to talk to someone, they have someone there that professionally that they can talk to, and they have a quiet space that they can go there to kind of calm down and readjust and put things back into perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started here 5 years ago, I was approached by one of our doctors at our hospital who had already been researching grant funding for offering the same type of project for police departments. And they were fortunate enough to get a grant, and our department and neighboring department were actually the first ones that were given the opportunity to have a chill project. And we had we have a psychologist on hand that is available to us at any time to assist our officers with mental health and well-being. And what it is, again, if it's family issues, if it's work issues, if you've been in a stressful situation, if you've seen something that you potentially are causing light reoccurrences of PTSD, you have this ability to now talk to a trained medical professional who's there for us. So we're not going to somebody who we don't know. It's all grant funded, and it took buy-in. It truly did because again, I hate to say it, but we're a very skeptical profession, and anytime that we want to really talk about things, it's difficult. I'll be the first one to admit that that's probably one of the areas I'm not perfect in. You see something. That's one of the probably I don't want to say a bad characteristic, but one of the characteristics I picked up from my dad. You never show emotion. You handle everything, and but we have found in our profession that's when things break. When you keep putting that wall up, and that wall can't hold you any longer, and it just falls over. But we don't want our officers to get to that point. We want to try to meet them when things are starting.
Yeah.
So we can attack those issues and help them work through those issues and be a better officer on the back end where they realize that they can't do this alone. They need help. So when I say it took buy-in, we had to have several meetings with the medical professional that was going to help us out. And one of the buy-ins too is to make sure that even though I'm part of this, I'm the chief of police. People had to realize that this is anonymous. That everything they're doing is protected under HIPAA. It is for their well-being. If they go and want to talk to somebody, it's purely anonymous. They're not. I don't find out about it.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear. I get no results, anything like that. This is completely to help our department and our employees be the best that they can be, which is a great program. They also offered us training for things that we might encounter for other mental health issues on calls for service we might receive, which is a benefit too. And then as a little caveat, which was also grant funded, they provided us an app on our phones, which was called Mindbase. And the nice thing about Mindbase was it was tied into our CAD system, our computer aided dispatch. So if a person was dispatched to a certain type of call that might be, a critical incident, it's already flagging that individual for a check-in welfare with our healthcare professional. So that is something I think state of the art right now, that there's not many apps out there that can do that will actually red flag and say, hey, this person's been on this many types of serious calls. It's time for a little check-in. And we've seen, I think, some positive things about it. Again, I don't get reports on it, but um, trying to stay have my thumb on the pulse of the department. I think that we're trending in a great direction. I really do.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate it.
Yes.
And then your doggy.
Oh, yes. So we were fortunate also where through the Chill Project, they had a therapy dog that they brought in that they bring into the schools. And my lieutenant, second in command, fell in love with the. He's pretty much been my individual that has taken this head on, this Chill Project. So when he saw the therapy dog and how much um, well, everybody pretty much loves a dog. I mean, you bring a dog into an environment and there's smiles all over the place.
Of course.
So he saw how much joy that dog brought to just the people that were around us. That um, he just inquired, "Hey, what's it like to get a therapy dog? How would that go about?" Well, the breeder of that therapy dog heard about that and actually donated a therapy dog to him. His family was looking for a dog. And he said, listen, if you get this dog trained, certified as a therapy dog, and use it, we'll donate it to you and your family and to the borough, and you can use it as a therapy dog. And Nala is her name. And
Nala.
she actually just got certain. She's about a year and a half right now. And she's a Bernedoodle. So, and again, I'm not 100% up on what all is entailed with the Bernedoodle. However, one of the biggest aspects and positives of a Bernedoodle dog is they don't shed that much, and they're hypoallergenic, and so they don't really, people with allergies really can play with this dog and not be subjected to any serious allergens for their issues. So the therapy dog remains safe for everybody that she comes around in contact with, and she brings joy to everybody, and she's just fun. She barks around here, and believe me, on a stressful day, he lets her run through the departments, and she just brings joy, and it's been a welcome addition to the department, but it also is a family pet too, so twofold.
I love that. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that there's no denying when you see, I mean, we've all been to conferences before where they all bring their animals, and you see the most hardened, SWAT looking guy rolling around on the ground, laughing, and there's no denying that. But I think the important point that you said just now is like, how do you bring more joy into what you do?
The
Whatever
dog
that
is at work.
whatever that looks
Yes.
like, maybe the dog is a one way, but what are other ways that we can start to bring more joy and presence? Because that's the thing, like with the dog, you're being super present with them, right? And they're
Yes.
being super present with you. And so you're no longer thinking about the calls or the tasks or things that you did earlier in that day. You're no longer thinking about the future. You're really being present in that moment. And so, what are those small things that we can do to implement more joy into the workplace? And I think that that could be a brainstorming activity for everyone who's listening, because there's lots of ways that we could do that, right? There's
Great.
lots of different ways that we can bring more happiness and presence and laughter and joy into the work that we do.
And we're fortunate. We have not had any serious incidents, knock on wood, in the department or the area. But we're prepared now. Like if something happens in the schools,
Mhm.
that there might be something tragic that happens. We can bring the therapy dog, since she is certified now, into the schools and kind of help the kids along, or whatever you know. Group that we're attending, you bring our therapy dog in to greet them, and I'm thinking it's going to brighten up the room no matter what the situation is.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I know we're butting up on time here. I told you before we started that it was going to go by so
Oh,
fast.
yes, yes.
But my final question is for the younger generation. what words of wisdom would you share with them?
So I thought about this, and again, I think the most important thing is they need to worry about their own well-being. That should be number one. Prioritize their safety and well-being. Um, Continue to be professional and try to build a good rapport with the people you meet. Be honest and truthful. And I think the biggest thing is remember that no matter what the situation, um, you have to be able to balance your work life with your work life, your work with your regular life. There has to be a balance to that because if you can't balance your work life and your regular life, they're gonna you're gonna have a point in your life where it's just gonna um, build and build and blow up. So I think that if you can have a good balance, don't take your work at home to home. Yes, talk to people, but try to leave work at home and enjoy your time away from work. So have that good balance. That would be my words of wisdom to the newer generation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here and talking a little bit about your experiences and wellness and your words of wisdom. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course.